Digital Gaming had another hot take the other day. The first I've seen from them since the whole Toys for Bob are making a new 3D Donkey Kong thing, or were making a 3D Donkey Kong game. The Twitter account came out and made this weird Twitter post, like shilling for another Metroid 2 remake. Calling it one of the best Metroid games ever made. Way better than Samus Returns. This game is a masterpiece. This is the kind of thing we heard back in 2016 when the game first came out, right? People really, really genuinely believed that Nintendo would never make their own 2D Metroid remake, Metroid 2 remake. They really thought that this would be like the definitive Metroid 2 remake experience, right? They really like threw everything they had at this project to try and hype it up as like this major deal in the community. Like fans are making better Metroid games than Nintendo is. But the reality is that Metroid Prime Federation Force was better. It introduced new concepts to the Metroid franchise. It established the Galactic Federation as heroes. It did more things for Metroid than another Metroid 2 remake did, right? Another Metroid 2 remake is just fan fiction that pandered to a very specific group of people. People who obsessively try and like to pretend as if Nintendo is mistreating the Metroid IP, right? The belief when another Metroid 2 remake came out was that like Metroid was a dead IP, that it would stay a dead IP, and that Nintendo would never ever produce anything like it. But instead, what we got Federation Force, which kickstarted the new Metroid renaissance that we're going through now. We got Samus Returns, which brought back 2D Metroid after a 13-year hiatus, with the last game being Zero Mission, right? Which by the way was better than another Metroid 2 remake, even though like a lot of people are still in denial about that. We got Dread, which was fantastic, a huge new evolution for the Metroid franchise, and we're getting Metroid Prime 4, which is looking to be a highly successful, interesting uh, game coming next year, right? Again, four games in about in less than a decade is pretty good, right? Metroid is back. It's here to stay. It's doing really well for itself. And there is this very stubborn refusal from certain people in the community to admit it, right? Like I've said this a lot, like particularly when Samus Returns came out, where it's interesting where these people spent like over a decade like complaining, whining, crying about the lack of new Metroid games, right? They complained about Other M, they complained about Prime 3, they complained about Metroid Fusion, not so much about Zero Mission, but like they cried about all of these Metroid games, all of them, and when Nintendo brings the franchise back with Samus Returns, right, when they produce this really good, well-made, interesting remake of this classic Game Boy game, they seriously tried to spit in their face. They seriously tried pretending as if like Samus Returns was a bad remake and was inferior to what the fans produced with another Metroid 2 remake, which is like appallingly off base and ridiculous, and um, to me really demonstrates their mindset when hyping up the Metroid franchise, because it's not that they enjoy Metroid, right? They don't respect this franchise. They don't care about Nintendo. They don't care about like the developers or like the creator. Like to them, the important thing about Metroid is using it to like aggressively downplay like everything Nintendo does. Like if they announce anything else, like oh well, they could have announced the Metroid project. Like if they announce a new Metroid game, oh this isn't what I wanted. It's not hardcore enough. It's not mature enough. It's not Metroid. It's not a real Metroid game, right? Like the appeal of Metroid for these people is essentially a means of downplaying other Nintendo properties. And like LARPing as if you're an elitist, right? Like LARPing as if you just have like a higher standards than other Nintendo fans, as if like Metroid is inherently better than other properties. But like, oh wait, but they don't actually like Metroid games. They don't actually play them, and that's very clearly demonstrated by just how they treat all of these new Metroid releases, right? How many of these people did we see who were surprised by Silex coming back in Metroid Prime 4? You know, completely unaware of the fact that the character reappeared in Metroid Prime Federation Force, right? How many of these people played Prime Federation Force at all? You know, like you know, like Federation Force disrespected the brand. No, it didn't. Like again, it's it's one of those things that demonstrates just how out of touch and insane these people actually are. And the worship of another Metroid 2 remake is, I think, an example of this, where they prop up this fan game in an attempt to downplay the official Nintendo releases, right? That's all this is. It has nothing to do with like AM2R's qualities as a game or what it actually is, because it simply isn't as good as anything Nintendo has ever produced. But they'll show for it simply to disregard the official release. And that's what we saw with this Did You Know Gaming post, where this person, who I'm almost certain is actually Liam Robertson, the Dr. Cupcake 64, like the weird, like, again, this person behind the Did You Know Gaming account, like, went out of his way to specifically say that, like, oh, AM2R is better than Samus Returns, which is just so laughably off base. Like there's just no reason to think that, no reason to keep shilling the idea years after the fact, like other than to try and disrespect the Nintendo property. Like if you were a real Metroid fan, you would like the official release. You would respect what Nintendo did with it, right? You wouldn't get all up in arms trying to defend this fan project and try to present it as being like superior to the official release. Like it doesn't make any sense, right? And it's not just Samus Returns, obviously. Like it's also all the other Metroid games that have come out over the past several years that are getting disrespected, right? You know, like how long did it take for people to start acknowledging that Dread was good, right? You know, right out of the gate when that game released, we saw these people come out and just obsessively try to pretend that like Dread was a bomb or that it wasn't very good or that like you didn't need to play it or whatever. But in reality, it is a classic, right? Like Dread is a phenomenal Metroid game, and because of this mindset, because of this kind of people, of these kind of people, we're still in this like weird cycle where like it's not being seen as such by the wider community. Because admitting that Metroid Dread is good would be admitting that Nintendo makes good Metroid games. And that would be admitting that Nintendo has done something good, and that's something that that no gaming YouTuber wants to admit, right? Ever. Because they know there's no clicks in that. There's no views in that. There's no attention in that. There's no money in doing that, right? Like, never take someone who hypes up another Metroid 2 remake seriously.